story time. We're back to dropping a ball. The bouncing ball problem again. So we drop a golf ball from the top of a building 100 meters above a paved road. Each bounce, the ball reaches a vertical height of 3/4 of its previous height. What is the R value? Yes, 0.75. You can write 3/4 if you really want to. I'll write 3/4. Okay. Determine the vertical height to the nearest tenth of a meter of the ball after the 7th bounce. This is the stuff we've already done, this question. So, can you answer that question?
Yeah. Is that right or is like the pandemic?
No, this one's right. Yeah. So, after the 7th bounce. What's the answer? Okay. So because it says the word after, you can just use N up here. But if you don't like that, you remember if it's a 7th bounce, you're actually looking for T8. So then if you use the ARN -1, it would be this formula. But it gives you the same number. All right. Is that okay? 13.35? Yes. Questions? All right. Here we go. Next one. Find the total vertical distance to the nearest tenth traveled by the ball when it contacts the floor for the 7th time. So, don't freeze it. We drop the ball. Boom. So here's the bounces. 1. Boom. Number 7 bounce. Yeah. So you bounce and then you come up and then you go down, right? In equal height. So the total vertical distance, and remember you drop it from a height of 100. So you have to count the 100 plus, and then it's going to be, let me zoom in here. It's going to be T1 coming up and T1 coming down, right? The height that it goes up is equal to the height that it falls. So it's going to be 2 T1s plus 2 T2s. Now to get to hit the floor for the 7th time, what term is that? What's the, not term 8, non-term 7? It's going to be, yeah, it's going to be 6, right? Because term 1, T1 going up. So this is bounce 6, right? After bounce 6, it's going to be T1. You can't start with the 100 because it's only half of 1. All right, there's only one number coming down. So you have to start it here, coming up. That's your first term. T1, T2, T3. After bounce 6, it's going to be T6, T6. So it's going to go plus 2 T6s. Does that make sense? Because you're starting it, You have to start when you're doing total vertical distance. You have to start after the initial drop. That has to be your first term. You can't start here, right? Because this has up and down. This only has up and down. So we just put that in as a single term. And then everything else is going to be up, down, up, down. So it's 2T1, 2T2, blah, 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 to 2T6. I can factor a 2 out of there, which gives you this. What is that? T1 plus T2 all the way to T6. What's the shorthand to say that? What are we doing? You're finding the sum of the first 6 terms, right? So this is just S6. So then this formula becomes 100 plus 2 S6. So if we do T or S6, do we know the last term? Why don't we do S6? We'll do it right here. The last term? That's not what it said, though. What's the total vertical distance when it comes to when it hits the floor for the 7th time? So I have to figure out. Do I know these T6 numbers? You don't, right? So I'm not going to use the last term formula. I'm going to use the one that has, you don't know the last term, which is that one. The second one. We don't know the last term. Oh, the one under Tn. Is that the one? Yeah. This formula. So this is the formula. What is n? That's r. N is 6, right? That's the terms. So S6 is going to be our a value. What's our a value here? Yeah, so a is T1, right? So it's this height. You have to figure out that height. Sorry? It'll be 75. So if you go, T1 is going to be A, which is 100, times 0.75, so 75 meters. That is your T1. Your R value is 0.75 to the N, which is 6 minus 1 over 0.75 minus 1. All right, calculator time, people. Freezing? Thank you. You get 246.6?
Yeah.
Okay, what do I do with that? It's got to go right there, right? So it's 100 plus which should give you 593.2. So on your formula sheet, you should write this formula. TVD is total vertical distance, is the initial height, and I guess height has a T at the end of it, plus 2 times the sum of whatever terms you're summing. Okay? The only trick to this question is figuring out what is the term number. So I will have to say something like hits the floor for the 7th time. It's the term before that. And you always have to start with T1 being after the first bounce. Okay? Because you only have a drop here. Everything else is an up and down. Okay? So you don't have to do any of this stuff. You can just do this. The only trick is, what is your end value? Which term are you looking for? All right? Is that okay? Yeah, one more question. All right, next question. How many times does the ball need to bounce to travel approximately 675 in vertical distance? So, as soon as they say vertical distance or total vertical distance, write down your formula. What's the formula? So initial height, I'll write I, plus 2SN. We know the I know total vertical distance is 675. I know the initial height is 100. So what am I solving for? You're going to solve for Sn, essentially. And within Sn, you're going to solve for n. Initial height is the height of the building. So if I move this 100 over, I get 575 is equal to 2 Sn. If you divide off the 2, you get 287.5 is equal to Sn. Okay, what's Sn? It's going to be the second formula on your sheet. So really what you're doing is this. Okay. Do I know the A value? It's 75 because we did it in the previous question. I know the R value is 0.75. So if I go what is that? What is that? All right. Your unknown is a variable, which means you're going to have to log it. All right, peoples, go.
You're my bad castle. I have my bad calculator ready. You give it, then you can take it away. I can. I can take the paper too. Yeah, exactly.
We get it?
Yeah.
I keep looking for that thing. 11 bounces. Once you get it down to one term equals another term, then you log it. Don't log it before, otherwise it's going to be a mess. So 0.75 minus 1 is negative 0.25. Who am I talking to? Multiply that up, get negative 71, blah, blah, blah. Divide up to 75, get this. Add the 1, and then at this point, you can log it. You just have a term equaling a term. And the reason you go to the nearest number and you don't do round up or round down is because this is all, like we're rounding at these points. We're not carrying every decimal, so we're going to be off by a little bit. So just round to the nearest whole number. I tend to just keep like 4 as I go through. 3 or 4. If you round to like to 1 decimal, you'll be off by a bigger margin. So I usually keep 3 or 4 decimals. Does that make sense? No? Yes? Maybe? All right, you only got one question. Question 15. It's going to ask you to repeat it. No, we're doing lesson 4, but lesson 4 is really short. So one question, it's going to be a repeat of this stuff. I'll give you 10 minutes to do it. Lesson 3 is over.